It's great to welcome back with us, man who's written another interesting, fascinating book about, what could happen to the economy. It's called The Road to Ruin, the Global Elite's Secret Plan for the Next Financial Crisis. And we're joined today by Jim Rickards, and he was on with us not too long ago when his previous book was out, The New Case for Gold. And Jim, good to talk with you again. How you been?
I've been fine, Doug. Great to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess it was about, 6 months, maybe a little longer, that we talked to you about the book on gold. So congratulations on that. And I have a new one out. So this is an interesting year for you.
It's a little unusual to get two books in 1 year. But the current book that's out that just came out, The Road to Ruin, the subtitle is The Global Elite Secret Plan for the Next Financial Crisis. This is actually the third volume of a projected quartet. The first volume was Currency Wars, my first book, then The Death of Money, and now The Road to Ruin. The gold book was an important book, but it was a little bit of a specialty item, not part of this quartet that I'm working on. There'll be a fourth book probably coming out in 2018. So this is volume 3 of a quartet on the international monetary system. It talks a little bit about gold, but it's not mainly about gold. It's mainly about the instability of the monetary system, who's in charge of it, what they're planning for the next crisis, and how this will affect investors and their wealth, and what people can do today to prepare for it.
Yeah, I read through the book, and as someone who follows the stock market, has a little money in it. Everybody's kind of interested in what's been going on there. Kind of everybody thinks there's a bubble, and nobody can really predict, when and if that's going to end. But you paint kind of an interesting picture of what could happen, or maybe is happening right now, right?
Well, yeah, the stock market, actually, what's going on right now, I guess the Dow Jones went over 19,000 earlier today. That's pretty easy to explain. We have a new President-elect Trump, and during the campaign, people were so spun up about, his behavior and personality and all that, that people couldn't really get past that to look at his policies. But now that he's President-elect, they're looking at the policies, and they like what they see. He's talking about low taxes, less regulation, and more government spending on specific sectors. So, for example, pharmaceutical stocks are going up because he wants to repeal Obamacare. Caterpillar and John Deere are going up because he wants to spend more on infrastructure. Defense stocks like Boeing, Raytheon, Lockheed, they're going up because he wants to spend more on defense. And everything's going up because he wants to cut taxes, which in theory means Americans have more money to spend on consumer non-durable. So you kind of go across the board, and every sector is benefiting, and that's why the stock market's going up. There's only one problem, though, which is that when you actually look at it a little deeper, is a lot of things don't add up. In other words, Trump's talking about, and his advisors to Bannon talking about a $1 trillion infrastructure program. Well, look, we all want, better roads and bridges and airports. Everyone's all in favor of that, and there's a case for that. But $1 trillion is a lot of debt to pile on top of the $20 trillion we already have, and then they're talking about tax cuts, which will increase the deficit even further. So this is really the Reagan playbook, and in fact, that's no coincidence, because a lot of Trump's advisors were part of the Reagan Revolution. So you had people like Steve Moore, Larry Kudlow, Art Laffer, David Malpass. These are some of the people who are closest to Trump on the economic side. They were all part of the Reagan Revolution. They were in their 40s back then, and maybe now they're in their 70s, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the point is, they're running the same playbook, but we're operating under very different circumstances, which is Ronald Reagan, when he was sworn in, interest rates were 20%.
Right.
The debt to GDP ratio was 35%, which is quite low by historic standards. So interest rates had nowhere to go but down, which they did. That created a great bond market rally. Reagan could spend a lot of money without bankrupting the country because our debt to GDP was so low. He had a lot of fiscal space to grow the deficit without jeopardizing the creditworthiness of the United States. Now, Trump's kind of running the same playbook, but Reagan ran it against the high school football team. Trump's kind of running against the New England Patriots. In other words, Reagan had nothing but tailwinds. Trump's got headwinds. So you can run the same playbook with the same people, but you might get very different results. So it all depends on what the Federal Reserve does. If the Federal Reserve accommodates this, keeps easy money while they run up $1 trillion in deficits, that's going to be inflationary. There's no question about it. My estimate is that the Fed's actually going to not do that. They're going to lean into it. They're going to try to head off the inflation with a series of rate increases, that could throw us into a recession or even worse. So we're kind of on the knife edge between two extreme outcomes, inflation and recession. Investors have to be very nimble in here.
What about, and he's talked about it in his campaign, lowering the corporate tax rate, which hopefully is going to bring, I guess he estimates, $2 or $3 trillion perhaps back to the country. Would that make any difference?
Well, look, lowering the corporate tax rate is a good idea. I just got back from Ireland about a week ago, and they're apoplectic in Ireland because they have a 12% corporate tax rate. We have a 35% corporate tax rate. So all these corporations keep the money, in Ireland,
right.
And the Irish see a lot of these jobs and opportunities disappearing. Now, look, that's pretty much of an accounting fiction. There's a lot less there than meets the eye. Look, I understand that for accounting purposes, they've used Ireland as a booking center, and Apple may have $2 trillion of retained earnings in Ireland. But you don't think if Apple wanted to build a plant in the United States, they could just borrow the money and probably at close to zero interest rates and place the Irish money as collateral? They could do whatever they want in this country. This whole idea of bringing the money back is nonsense. It's just accounting entries. It has to do with what jurisdiction collects the tax. But it's not an impediment to any one of these companies building factories and R&D facilities and creating jobs and doing manufacturing and assembly in the United States. That money coming back is just a fiction. However, what the corporate tax rate cut will do, it'll make the U.S. a more attractive venue going forward. So it's not so much the old money is going to come over in a wave and save us. It's more the case that new investment will happen in the United States because it looks like a more attractive jurisdiction. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying it's a good thing, but it's a good thing for slightly different reasons than most people understand. Right. But the point I'm talking about in my book, The Road for Ruin, is that the issues I'm talking about are systemic. I like to say when an earthquake happens, an earthquake doesn't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. It'll knock down your house either way. And the forces that I'm describing are much larger than policy. Policy matters. Trump's policy is going to matter. Americans should care. It has to do with jobs and growth, and those are very important things. But a systemic global financial panic is bigger than any president or any set of policies. It's exactly like 2008 when everybody wants their money back and they have to use extreme solutions. In 2008, Hank Paulson, Secretary of the Treasury, Ben Bernanke, then the Chairman of the Federal Reserve, they walked over to the White House and went in to see President Bush, and they said, you have to do this, this, and this right now, or the entire economy is going to collapse. And what was Bush supposed to do? I mean, that was TARP and guaranteeing the bank deposits, guaranteeing the money market funds, money printing. There were lots of things that happened. He really had no choice. When this systemic crisis happens, and I expect it will happen on Trump's watch, the same thing. I mean, it's going to be bigger than Trump. They're going to walk into the president's office and say, Mr. President, you need to do this, this, and this. And then that's what I'm trying to prepare the readers for. Explain how this works, how it's going to happen, and what the solution will be. But it'll be bigger than Trump's programs.
I know we have just a minute or two left, but the ICE 9, I know you talk about that in the book. Can you explain that in 30 seconds?
Sure. ICE 9 is a concept I borrowed from Kurt Vonnegut. It had to do with, it was a science fiction novel called Cat's Cradle about a molecule similar to water, but it was actually ice at room temperature, and if it came in contact with a water molecule, it would turn all the water to ice. So if you dump this ICE 9 into a river, the streams, the lakes, the oceans, everything would turn to ice, and life on Earth would die. It was a doomsday machine. I compare that to the financial system. When the panic comes and everybody wants their money back, they're going to shut down money market funds. But then people just go to the banks to get their money. Then they're going to have to shut down the banks. Then they'll sell stocks and they'll have to shut down the stock exchange. So it's exactly like ICE 9. You can't freeze part of the system. You have to freeze the entire system, probably for a few months, maybe longer. And that's why I recommend people have some physical gold and silver outside the banking system to weather that storm.
Well, it's interesting, a bit chilling perhaps information, but I guess overall, are you optimistic, Jim?
I'm always optimistic in the long run. I'm basically an optimistic person, but I'm also realistic, and I'm an analyst, and I've got very good models that have produced very good results. So as I say, we can see this coming, but we don't have to be victims. We can prepare for it, and I lay all this out in my book, The Road to Ruin.
Road to Ruin, the Global Elite Secret Plan for the Next Financial Crisis is the title. And Jim, once again, give out your website. People can get more information about you and the book.
It's at jamesrickardsproject.com. Rickards is R-I-C-K-A-R-D-S, jamesrickardsproject.com. The book's available in all independent bookstores, Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com. And if people are interested, they can follow me on Twitter at James G. Rickards.
Great. Jim, great to talk with you again. Have a good holiday season, and we'll talk to you next year when the next book comes out. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Doug.
I'm Stan Brock. 30 years ago, I formed Remote Area Medical to help people overseas. But then we found generations of families in America isolated by poverty from the health care they need. Together, we can take dental, vision, and medical help to 1 million adults and their kids, right here at home in the United States of America.
If you'd like to order the book we're talking about, please go to DougMilesMedia.com and enter the author's name in the Amazon search box. Thank you for listening. Please come back soon for more conversations here at DougMilesMedia.com. This has been a presentation of Doug Miles Media, all rights reserved. You can listen to or download previous programs at iTunes, Stitcher.com, or Doug Miles Media.